hear you swallowing, by the way.
Can you?
Yeah. Oh, God. Did you just do that? You're like a ventriloquist.
I did. Just making a little noise in my throat.
How do you do that?
I have no idea.
That's like your party trick. Did you even know you could do that before just now?
Oh, yeah. I don't know why or how, but I knew it.
Hello, and welcome to Middleish, the podcast about moderation in all things. I am Erin Green.
And I am Michael Gray.
Are you trying to sound as chipper as I am?
I don't know if I can sound as chipper as you.
I was trying.
You sound pretty chipper. And I'm Michael Gray. Howdy, y'all. Welcome to the show.
Oh, geez. Now we're in Kentucky or something. I don't know.
Or Texas. You know where I am.
I have never heard you speak like that, though, and you're not from Texas, so.
But you know what? I did get, I finally got my Texas driver's license after being here a long time.
Oh, boy.
So I feel like that makes it a little more official, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that I'll ever be like officially a Texan because I'm not from here, but about as official as I can get.
You know, with all the people moving to Boise and all of the locals I'm hearing bitch about the out-of-state license plates, anytime I see someone with like a Texas license plate, I'm like, get to the DMV before people get angry at you.
Right. Yeah. I know we both have like influxes going on because there are a lot of people from California coming to like Austin and stuff too. I mean, I'm not in Austin, but you know, same state.
I know the whole migration of people in general.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It'll be interesting just to see how it plays out the next 2, 3, 5 years, whatever, because I think a lot of it has to do with the pandemic. And now that things are hopefully starting to normalize, we'll see where that goes.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we get into things, Erin and I have an ask of you viewers, and that is this. So we put this podcast out audio on several different platforms, you know, Spotify and Pocket Casts and Apple Podcasts, all that. But we also put a video version on YouTube. So our YouTube channel, I don't know if it's summer or what, but we just aren't getting a bunch of views, like very few on YouTube. And so we're kind of thinking about maybe not doing the video component anymore, because if people aren't going to watch it there, then there's really no point, right? So that being said, if you are someone who is like, yes, I love having the video, that's the only way I'll watch it, please keep doing it. Let us know, because if people are into it, absolutely we'll keep doing it. But if it's just kind of a thing where people kind of stumble on, you know, a few people a week or whatever, then we might just strip it down just to audio. So if you feel strongly about having a video or a way to watch the video. If you want to
see our beautiful faces.
Yep. And Michael Scamper in the background as he's killing spiders or things like that. Let us know. So that's our ask. And our other ask is, hey, while you're thinking about this, give this a share, rate, review us, right? Send this to a friend, because helping spread this message it's massively helpful to us. And we appreciate you spreading the message of Middleish. So if you're into this podcast, which I'm assuming you are since you're listening, think about who could benefit from us, or from this, who would enjoy what we're having to say and that kind of stuff. And please share it with them. Go do it now. Come back.
Yeah.
Pause, share, come back. Pause, share, come
and
back.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Yeah.
I've actually had a few people in the last week, unique people that I didn't know really listened to the podcast, say that they listened to the Unbound 206 podcast.
And 6.
Yeah. And it's been really fun to have people, because I mean, I'll tell the story over and over, right? I'm fine with sharing race experiences and telling stories, but it's kind of nice just to say, hey, you know, listen to the podcast. This has all of the information and some cool questions and stuff. And then, you know, if you still have questions, then come to me and ask me. And so it's fun.
Yeah. Super fun. Yeah. It's always Well, I think it's fun and it's really helpful too. I think when people give us feedback,
Mm-hmm.
like what things are connecting with people or
Mm-hmm.
what things are people maybe not enjoying or wanting, that kind of stuff. It's really helpful for us to know kind of, I mean, we have sort of this overarching thing that we feel like we need to accomplish, but the experience for the user or listener is really important. And so kind of any feedback we get on direction or topics, that kind of stuff is really helpful for us to do something that is more applicable to you and where you're at. So
Yeah.
yeah,
If you have topic suggestions, hit
send them
us up.
our way.
Mm-hmm.
Partner.
And we'll
Yeehaw.
see if oh, geez, he's back.
I'm gonna be Texas
He's
Michael for
back.
this whole episode, just so you know.
Texas Michael.
I'm
So
sad we don't have a guest today, so I could just be this, and they would just think
Texas
that was
Michael.
me. How y'all doing?
So I have to tell you this funny story. This last weekend, we had a great event in Boise. We look forward to it every year. It's the Twilight Criterium.
Mhm.
It's a notorious bike race that happens in downtown Boise, and it's a crit, so it's really fast paced. Um, Tons of people, teams from around the country. It's super fun, and it's for the locals. It's an opportunity to get down there and mingle with your friends and other bike loving, people in the community.
Mhm.
It's just a great party. And I was down there with friends, and one of my friends had, I guess, been imbibing for some time now and was morphing into his alter ego, which is called Dance Party Tyler.
Oh,
His name is Tyler, but he turns into Dance Party Tyler.
it
And
would be
it's
great
so,
if his name wasn't Tyler. If it was
so
like
what I,
Steve.
it's just, yeah, he
But
just,
this is Dance Party Tyler. It's a whole different thing.
so when you said Texas Michael, I'm just like, oh, is this an alter ego here?
It's like Prison Mike from
Um,
The Office or Date Mike.
right, exactly. Well, and it's a very distinct transition from Tyler
Mhm.
to Dance Party Tyler. I mean, anybody can tell there's some metamorphosis happening here with this
Mhm.
person.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the Date Mike episode now, where
Mm.
where he says, "I'm Date Mike. How do you like your eggs in the morning?"
Oh,
Like
geez.
he thinks this is a good opening line.
There are so many things that I've already forgotten about The Office that I need to go watch again.
Yep. I think you need to take a week
Yeah.
off and just marathon
Oh,
it a few
that sounds
times,
lovely right
doesn't
about
it?
now.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah. Thanks for the permission.
You're right. I knew you were. Yeah, I knew you were looking for it.
I'll have to talk to my boss about it.
Oh wait, she's right here. Do you want me to ask her?
Maybe we should ask Dance Party Tyler.
Dance
He'd
Party
probably give you
Tyler is
permission.
down. Yep, 100%. He's like, quit your job. Just go dance. Some glow
Sounds
sticks, some
lovely.
body paint. Yep. Find a rave. You're good. Yeah.
Tube socks.
Yep.
Okay. We have a topic today.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're doing a podcast, aren't we?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're being recorded and our poor listeners are subject to our banter.
Oh, that's why
I
they're
know.
here. That's why they're here.
So, how did this topic come up, Michael? Because I think this was your idea to talk about this, even though I 100% agree that we need to lay it bare.
I think it was just one of those things that there were a few that came to me kind of like at once. I remember, I don't know if I texted you or emailed you or something like, hey, here are some random ideas. And they were just sort of all like these just really common things that you hear about, right? Or that people are confused about, or that there's just a bunch of misinformation about. Like I'm trying to think of what one of the other ones was. I don't know. It was something about something, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, this is one of those. It's just, I feel like this is a topic that comes up frequently, that you hear about a lot. And I mean, not just like Instagram and Facebook, but like the news, right? Like major
Mm-hmm.
publications, magazines and online resources, stuff that are talking about it. And there's a bunch of misinformation out there about it. Even from seemingly like well-informed places, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
doctors and such. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, the it we are
Mm-hmm.
talking about is sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically the question of, is sugar toxic?
Nope, it's
Am I
not. We're done. End of podcast. Is sugar toxic? Nope.
Period.
See you later.
Yeah. And am I addicted to sugar? There's a lot of misinformation out there around sugar, and there are some important things to consider about sugar as well. So we'll dive into some of this and talk about just what we observe as health practitioners, as wellness experts, as people working with clients who have questions for us. And should I be doing this, or what do you think about this? Is there some research to support these things that I'm seeing and hearing on, social media, whatever.
Right.
So,
right. And should I be scared of it? I think that's a big one, because it's like that fear is such a motivating thing within the diet and fitness industry, right? Like, so many people make so many decisions based on like being scared of something. Like, I'm scared to eat carbs. I'm scared to eat after 7. I'm, scared to eat fruit. I'm scared to eat ice cream. Like, there's so much fear that, like, just looking at, is there any basis to this? Is there any reason to be scared of sugar?
Right.
Just seems like,
yeah.
You open up your cupboard and there's a bag of sugar.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. So I think it's important just to start with some real basics, that there are different types of sugar molecules. And yes, they are processed slightly differently in your body depending on the sugar molecule. For example, glucose is largely managed in your bloodstream by your pancreas, by hormones, and where fructose is processed in the liver. Different types of sugar will go through different mechanisms of metabolism. So there is something to consider there. However, we'll talk a little bit about how some of the fear mongering that we hear around fructose specifically and high fructose corn syrup is really kind of skewed and not really founded in a lot of I would say comprehensive literature looking at the entirety of metabolism, the entirety of the diet and behaviors of a person. You can't just pin it on one thing.
Right.
So we'll talk a little bit about that. But yeah, sugar at its basic level, your body is fully capable of processing it and putting it where it needs to go. And your cells rely on sugar for energy. So one of the things I hear, for example, with cancer patients, I've had, some friends approach me who have been diagnosed with cancer and say, oh, I hear sugar is really bad because cancer cells live off of sugar. And I'm like, well, all your cells, require sugar. And so that's no surprise that cancer cells would thrive on sugar. I am certainly not an oncology dietitian. And I, just from my limited reading and understanding, I do think that there's some dietary manipulation that people can engage in and try out and see if adjusting what they eat can help with that. But just using that as an example to illustrate that even when you hear something horrible, like, well, cancer cells thrive on sugar. Well, if all cells thrive on sugar,
cells too,
then it becomes a lot less scary then when we put it into context. And so I think that's just one of the things to understand as we go through some of the science and some of the folklore and the fear of sugar. I think it's important for people to keep perspective on really what we're talking about and how this applies to human beings and not just in a petri dish somewhere.
Yeah. And just to like build on that, just this idea that it's really important when you hear something to just be curious or maybe even be skeptical, of, okay, but what else? Like when you hear something like cancer cells thrive on sugar, it's important to go like, okay, but what does that mean? Right? Like, because this is how a lot of this fear stuff starts. There's truth to it, right? Which is important for something to be spread. It's got to have some kind of truth to it, but it's either a skewed version of the truth, like it's twisted and in ways, or it's not the whole truth. Right. So like Aaron's saying, yeah, cancer cells thrive on sugar. So do all the other cells. So like, this is how cells grow. Like this is what they use for energy. So that doesn't mean this is automatically a bad thing, right? It's like, I remember seeing a while ago this sort of meme, and it was about a banana, right? Like we talk, hear about like the sugar and fruit, like
People
fructose,
hate on bananas. It drives me
right?
crazy.
Right? Like fructose is so bad for you. You know, sugar and fruit is so bad for you. And it was just a breakdown of like, well, you know what? Okay, so like, and I don't know if this is accurate. I had to look it up, but if these percentages are accurate, but it's a general idea. Sure, a banana has some fructose. It also has glucose and maltose and sucrose and fiber. Like
Yes.
it's not just this. It's in fact, the thing I'm looking at now says that fructose is around 24% of the sugar in there. Is
Yeah.
it predominantly? Maybe, but not at all like a huge majority. It's a bunch
Yeah.
of things. And so we hear like a little bit of truth and we buy into it, and then we start making decisions based on that. It's really important to be like your own ambassador for health. It's to be an investigator, right? Like to be curious. And when you hear these strong statements, to go, I wonder what else there is out there about this. I wonder what I'm not being told, because chances are, if you hear something that makes you go like, ooh, that's scary, there's more you're not being told. We really have to take this on ourselves. And I think there are people saying good stuff out there like us, you know, like we're trying to spread this message. There's a lot of people doing it, but you also are responsible for your own health and your own well-being. And part of your own health and well-being is not being unnecessarily fearful of things, especially things that are really freaking good for you, like a banana.
Oh, yeah. Don't get me started. I have a couple of funny stories about.
Do you? I got one too.
Yeah, just the getting, I mean, you want to get me ranting, just start picking on fruits and vegetables and plant foods and just, I mean, don't get me started. Um, just back to the sugar molecule thing for a second, because I think that where people have gotten the messaging that specifically high fructose corn syrup is the villain. You know, we hear a lot about high fructose corn syrup. Now, high fructose corn syrup, just to help explain how this came about, is a molecule that was created by using corn syrup.
There, you lost us already. Created, manufactured against God's will. You are speaking. I don't want to hear anymore.
Yeah. So, nutrition evangelist came into our studio for a second.
Yeah. I had a little bit of that evangelist tone, didn't I? I didn't even mean to do that.
You put in that Texas accent, and we're like fully in the evangelical realm. So, high fructose corn syrup was developed as an inexpensive additive to food. And yes, I'm using the word additive because it is added to food, and it's primarily used in processed foods. So it is a very sweet alternative to, say, table sugar.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you use less of it, and it's cheaper to make because corn is subsidized in the US. And there you go. So I'm simplifying it, but that's the basics. Yeah. High fructose corn syrup is seen in so many foods because it is inexpensive and you can use very little to get a sweet, flavor going on in that food or complement in that food. Now, just a note on that, we are all programmed as human beings to like sweet tastes. That's how we survive. So our bodies are very smart. They know that our cells need sugar. And so sugar tastes really good. And it sends off some feel good receptors in the brain, which then gets extrapolated into, oh, well, sugar has the same effect as cocaine. All right, well, let's just back up for a second and say physiologically, we have a pleasure center in the brain. And there are a lot of things that set off that pleasure center in the brain. There's a lot of things. I can name a few. Petting your cat or dog, that sets off some pleasure center in the brain. Eating any kind of food that has especially like an emotional tie from your childhood. Listening to music or having a smell that is pleasurable. Having sex. Being in nature. There's 1,000 things that are
having sex while in nature.
Sure.
While listening to music and eating ice cream.
While eating sugar. Yeah. All of it.
But not petting the dog.
I think that should be part of like a rehab. Like, okay, this is maybe an off-color joke, but okay, you've got a problem with cocaine, all of these things at once. Have this Adam and Eve oasis where you can do all the pleasurable things. So I think when people, again, you hear that sugar, is akin to cocaine or whatever these things. If you're not hearing the whole truth, that is that a lot of things are very pleasurable to us and set off those, that pleasure center of the brain that have nothing to do with food. So let's not vilify.
That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Like,
yeah.
Oh, wait, you enjoyed it? You enjoyed something? How unhealthy are you? Don't you know that being a healthy person means you are miserable and you hate your life? That's how you get happier. That's how you feel better about yourself. But everything's awful.
And it's mind-boggling to me that we are in this society where you need to be uncomfortable or not enjoying things. Like you need to, it's that white knuckling concept that you talk about all the time. Like if you're hard on yourself and if it sucks, then it must be you're doing it right, instead of just really enjoying things. So when it comes to sweet things and sugar, it's supposed to be enjoyable. This is how we are biologically hardwired.
Yeah. So let's talk for a minute about just the whole sugar is toxic kind of thing. Are you good with going there?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Just give me a minute. I need to take
I know. Everybody if Michael starts ranting, I'll give him the whole like cut on Zoom so we can simmer down.
Stop it.
He's going to rant.
I'll
That's
try.
okay. I have a rant of my own.
Okay. I'll try not to get too worked up because I get worked up easy with this stuff. Here's the thing about anything. So let's set aside sugar for a minute. Let's just talk about toxic, right? Like you really can't go anywhere like physically or digitally without hearing someone talk about toxins, right? Like they're in your makeup, they're in your deodorant, they're in your shampoo, they're in your Tupperware, they're in your food. They're everywhere, right? Toxins, quote unquote toxins. Here's something really important. And I can't stress how freaking important this is. This is incredibly, incredibly important. If you refuse to do this, I don't know, maybe you just want to continue perpetuating stupid things. I don't know. Maybe that's your jam. Okay. But this is the truth. If you're going to talk about something being toxic, you have to, in that same sentence or paragraph, talk about the dosage. Because if you don't talk about the dose of a substance, you can't talk about its toxicity. Okay. Because the dosage matters, right? Like what's the quote you have? The dose makes the poison. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about like formaldehyde, right? Let's talk about formaldehyde. This isn't something you want to ingest a lot of, right? It might kind of mess you up a little bit. It might make you pretty sick or kill you, right? Like it's not something that you just want to down a cup of. But you know where we found formaldehyde all the time? In apples and spinach and a bunch of other fruits and vegetables, just in very teeny tiny small doses. Because there's no toxicity there. The body's able to handle it, and it's not in any way a big deal. If you drank a gallon of it, you'd probably be dead. If you eat an apple, you're fine. Guess what? There's a bunch of middle ground. So if we're going to talk about, here's the other one, right? Like water can be toxic. People can, we talked about this in a hydration episode. People can literally die from drinking too much water. I mean, if you ask anyone, what is the least likely substance thing you can think of to be toxic? They're probably going to pick water, right?
Yeah, it's essential to life.
Like, it's in everything, right? Like everything.
Right.
And it can kill you. It can be toxic at a certain dosage. So if you're going to talk about toxicity, you have to also talk about dosage. And that is something we never, ever see when people talk about the is sugar toxic, right?
Yes.
Because for this, it's not about dosage. It's not about amounts. It's not about over what period of time. It's just, it is or it isn't. And this is a really bad way to approach any kind of exploration of anything within the health and fitness, really scientifically even, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just a bad way to go about stuff. So if you're going to say, hey, is sugar toxic? You got to go, to what degree?
How much?
What dose?
Yeah.
How often?
Yeah.
In what amount? To who? Like you got to ask all these other things, because all of these other things, you can't answer that question without all that other information. You just can't.
Yep. And the research points to that too. We hear this research, just back to the fructose thing. We hear that it, can alter metabolism, that because it's so taxing on your liver, that it can increase, the fat production and how your body stores it. And so then you've got increased triglycerides that are circulating through your blood, which then translates into heart disease. So we see like this cascade of, kind of extrapolating this research and saying, well, because you have fructose and too much fructose in your system,
Right.
then it taxes the liver and it does all these things. But how much is too much? When the research is examined, a lot of the research has been done in rodents or had like excessive amounts of these substances. And I mean, fructose is a common example, but artificial sweeteners is another one, or other, other substances that people like to vilify. They've been put in extreme amounts and in certain forms that you would not naturally get in food, even if you're drinking soda that's almost all high fructose corn syrup. So I think it's really important for people to understand that when we see this research, yes, obviously take it, with curiosity and look into a little bit further, or ask a trusted. I mean, I know not everybody listening to this is a researcher, and so it's probably really hard to, comb through all the literature, which is really unfortunate because headlines are what spread like wildfire in this world. So if you're curious, then do your own research, ask someone that is has a foundation in reading the literature and keeping up on the science, because as Michael said, the dose is what makes the poison. And in a lot of this research, fructose can have some metabolic altering effects, and we want to definitely take note of that. But in what amounts? And can you actually get that amount by consuming a varied, healthy diet?
Yeah.
Now, talking about dietary extremes, if somebody is drinking a ton of soda that has high fructose corn syrup in it, or eating a ton of highly processed foods, well, we don't need to vilify fructose or sugar for that to be a red flag that that's not a healthy way to be. Right. So again, like, kind of use some logical sense here. It's not the sugar that's the problem. It's probably the lack of other nutrients and that eating pattern and the lack of variety and all of the other things that come into play when we see that it's not the high dosage of high fructose corn syrup. So
yeah. Okay, I got like 7 things I want to say.
Oh, deep breath. Okay.
I know, right? Okay, I'm going to focus on one. So let's talk about, because you kind of mentioned this, let's talk about like studies and research, and then how that gets distorted in like the media, right? So let's talk about like artificial sweeteners. Let's talk about diet sodas in particular, because anyone listening, you've probably heard diet sodas cause cancer, right?
Or something. They cause everything.
So, okay. So this is another really important instance to go, what else, what other information is there? What else is tied to this? Where'd this come from? And what else am I missing? Because if like Aaron said, most of this research, a lot of it is done on rats. Hey, guess what? I don't know if you knew this. You're not a rat. Like you're not a rat. And that matters. Okay. It matters because we are biologically similar in some ways. We are biologically different in a lot of ways. You're not a freaking rat. Okay. So that matters. Aaron also said that not only is it done on something that's not human, these studies, but they're done to these extreme amounts, right? So let's look at like the biggest study that has set this whole diet sodas cause cancer thing in motion. Okay, it's done in the 70s, right? Yes, artificial sweeteners. It was linked to these tumors in the bladders of rats. Okay.
Yeah. Was this a sucralose? Is that what they looked at?
Saccharin. Yeah.
Saccharin. Thank you.
Yeah. And so, scary, right? Okay. So here's the thing: for you to ingest the same amount of saccharin that had this negative response in rats, which aren't you, You'd have to drink. Do you know the answer here?
I know that I've
Okay. So here,
seen this before,
for
but
everybody listening, I just want you to imagine in your head, like, I wonder how many cans of diet soda he's going to say. I just want
right.
you to think of a number. Okay. I'm like a magician right now. Think of the
Yeah.
number in your
Think
head.
of a number.
All right. So the number you'd have to drink 800 cans of diet soda a day. That's the amount, right? So you know what? You
That was
drink
higher than I remember. 800.
800
I'm
cans
just thinking
of
your stomach would
anything,
explode from carbonation before.
right? Like, so, okay, so maybe it can cause cancer. It looks like it can in rats, maybe in humans, but can it really? I mean, does it have that potential? No, because you can't consume that much, right? So like this stuff matters. So again, it's like, the apple. Like, yeah, too much formaldehyde, yeah, probably gonna kill you. Very small amount, seems like you're fine. Same with diet sodas, same with sugar. This stuff really matters that you look behind what's going on, behind the information that we're presented with, because usually those really broad, scary statements fall apart pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you brought that up too, that the whole saccharin study. And I've seen similar, comparisons with,
Mm-hmm.
there have been other rat studies where the pellet that they gave the rat actually caused lesions in their digestive tract because they couldn't break down the pellet. So it wasn't the substance, it was actually the form that they put into the rodent. So anyway, this is just to say that research is not always straightforward. I was taught in grad school that research doesn't always answer questions, it usually raises more questions. If you're a good researcher, you should always come out with more questions, not thinking that you found the answer. So when you're reading research, keep that in mind too.
Yeah.
Um,
Can I say one last thing on
yeah,
that diet soda thing?
please.
So the acceptable daily limit for a 150-pound person, let's take like Diet Coke, right? Of aspartame is
Yeah.
3,400 milligrams. You know how many milligrams is in a Diet Coke? 200.
Yeah.
Like,
So
yeah, you got to drink, I don't know what, 17 of
that's,
these,
yeah, something
18 in a
like
day to have
15.
any kind of ill
Mhm.
effect.
Yeah. And if you're
Okay.
doing that, again, I would ask what are you
Yeah,
missing in your
exactly.
diet? And I think that anybody would agree that if I presented that, like, would you drink, 17 Diet Cokes in a day? They'd probably be like, yeah, no, that's not a great idea.
Mhm.
Similarly with, the high fructose corn syrup in our food supply. Well, if you're eating ultra processed foods with this added to the food, it's a formula. That's all
Mhm.
it is. The
Mhm.
companies come up with recipes that are highly palatable and that will sell. That's the food companies'
Because that
goal.
works. Yeah.
They want
And
to sell food.
of course
And
they
you
do.
can't, you can't blame them, and they want to have good margins, and so they
Right.
use the least expensive ingredients that they can, and you know, make their margins. So with the high fructose corn syrup in our food supply, it really depends on what foods are you eating that are
Mhm.
high in this, because I will tell you, if you're eating fructose in the form of fruits and vegetables, which yes, vegetables have fructose as well. And if you're eating things like, potatoes and corn and starchy vegetables, those have fructose in them as well.
Yeah.
It has a different effect on your metabolism and your body when you're eating those forms versus the highly processed stuff. This is not newsworthy. We know this. Like, this information has been around forever. So this is the commercial I wanted to tell you about. And I don't know if I've talked about this on here before. I might have mentioned it
I
at
don't
one
know.
point. Um, Back in 2019, there was a Super Bowl commercial for Bud Light. And they have like the medieval knights or whatever that are walking around in the Bud Light commercials, right?
Mhm.
And he's pulling along this like big barrel of his beer, and he's saying something about Bud Light not having high fructose corn syrup in it. And of course there's this neighboring castle that's the competition,
Mhm.
and oh, you use high fructose corn syrup, ours doesn't have any. So Bud Light is trying to put the spin on things that they're
Right.
beer is superior because it does not have high fructose corn syrup. It has 4 ingredients. I was just
It's the healthy beer.
looking at this. It's the healthy beer. So the 4 ingredients that were listed on, and this all came about because the beer companies were just starting to list their ingredients on the label and their nutrition information. So it was a new kind of thing. So 4 ingredients in Bud Light: water, barley, rice, and hops. So there's 2 things here. There's 2 things that really got me. First of all, I don't know that I would be super excited about advertising that my product has rice as its 3rd ingredient.
Yeah.
Because rice is associated with what poison, what toxin, arsenic. Yeah. So we hear all kinds of stuff about that. I don't think that I would be super stoked about saying, well, I don't have high fructose corn syrup, but we've got rice. All right. Okay. So there's that thing that I'm like, geez, if it was to me, it was like a total lopsided, I don't know, whoever came up with that marketing campaign clearly doesn't understand food science and what's going on in this world. Yeah. The second thing is, Matt and I are sitting on the couch watching this commercial, and I'm just like, it was like a series of commercials. So like every commercial break, it would come up again and they'd have like another continuation of it. High fructose corn syrup. We don't have any of that. And I was like boiling. I just couldn't hardly stand it. And Matt's like, well, what's wrong with that? I don't want to be drinking high fructose corn syrup. And I turned to him and I'm like screaming in my living room, but alcohol is a toxin. Like, give me a break, people. You're so worried about high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
Yet you are drinking a known toxin. There is nothing really beneficial that comes from an alcohol molecule in our bodies. So let's just get that straight.
And not only that, a toxin that you can like have ill effects of really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you can have 4, 5, 6 beers and you can not be doing so well because your body's full of a toxin.
Yeah.
But screw that. That doesn't matter because we're going to market. That's a different thing. We just accept that. And let's not talk about that. This makes sense. And I don't like things that make sense. I live over here and, I
was having a heyday on Twitter with that one. Like a bunch of the dietitian accounts that I follow and the food scientist accounts that I follow were just like, what are they thinking? Like, this is just, you could blow holes in this commercial all over the place. Yeah. So
it's like I think it was just this morning or last night, I saw on Instagram, someone posted, it was a picture of someone in a truck, right? And they had a bumper sticker that said something about like fluoride, your water's full of toxins or something like that.
Oh, Lord.
And the guy's sitting there with his hand out the window, smoking a cigarette. Like, oh, dude. Okay.
So
watch out for that fluoride.
This is no joke. This is no joke. I have worked with clients before who will not drink diet soda. So they drink regular soda because it's natural. Okay.
Yeah, from the soda tree.
Right.
Right. It's like maple syrup. You just tap it. It just comes right out. It's in Vermont with all that sap.
All that sweet, sugary stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So drinking regular soda because diet soda is, quote, full of chemicals. This person is also a smoker. Uh-huh. And this is like a prime example of how messaging, and like Michael said, the fear-based messaging that we get is so strong and influential in our food world and in, diet culture and just advertising and all of it. Mm-hmm. People really get this myopic on health topics. They think, well, because this is bad, I'm going to eliminate that, or I'm not going to do that thing, but then I'll justify this behavior somehow. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's wild.
Okay. I got to take another deep breath because I'm going to talk about chemicals for a minute. Let's talk about chemicals for just a second. So if you're worried about eating something because it has chemicals in it, you're in for a really hard future because you know what else has chemicals in it? Everything. Everything has chemicals in it.
Well, I
This is
mean,
how,
to be honest, water has a chemical structure, right?
right? Everything has chemicals in it. Like
Yeah.
you have chemicals in you. Like this is how things exist, is chemical compounds, right? Like
Yep.
anything you eat has chemicals in it. So let's stop talking about with this broad strokes, wide paintbrush kind of thing of, well, I'm not going to eat, I don't want to do that because it has chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
Of course it does, because it exists, because it's a thing.
Right.
So it's got some chemicals. Okay. So let's start there. Let's just all chill out
Yeah.
a little bit. And maybe there may be something valid you're trying to say, or that the information someone's presenting to you, but we've got to say it in a way that makes sense. We've got to
Mm-hmm.
speak in logical terms, because if we refuse to speak logically, then I don't think we're real willing to think logically. And if we're not going to do those things, maybe you shouldn't be talking.
I can think of a lot of people that
Just
probably
being
shouldn't be
blunt, you know
talking.
what I mean?
Just
Because if you actively aren't interested in things that are sound and facts,
Mhm.
sorry if it goes against something you've held on to for a long time. Guess what? That's
Yeah.
part of learning and growing. And if you're not willing to
Well,
do
and
that, and you're going to double down in something that's nonsense, you shouldn't be spreading any ideas.
yeah. Um, please don't. Well, I was going to say something else.
There go our
We'll
5
leave
viewers
that.
on YouTube.
I know. I know. Um, and along that same vein, I think also keep in mind when you hear these messages or you come across something that sounds scary, like there's chemicals in your food, there's toxins, sugar is toxic, any of this stuff, understand that human beings are very complex.
Mhm.
We have not just our physiology and our metabolism and our genetics at play, but our environment. My environment is different than yours. We live in completely different parts of the country.
Mhm.
Socioeconomic status is really closely tied with health outcomes.
Mhm.
Simply, your education level is tied with health outcomes. So, really understand that when you hear about these negative health outcomes or high inflammatory diet or any of these things that sound really scary, that there is a thousand layers beneath
Right.
that one thing
So
that people
important.
want to pin it on. So
Mhm.
similarly with sugar, oh, sugar is the bad guy. Well, there's a thousand other things that people are
Right.
doing or not doing that
Right.
could lead to certain outcomes. And it's research gives us a snapshot of that, and it gives us some tools and some guidance, and again raises more questions so we
Mhm.
can keep looking into it. But it doesn't tell us like this for sure leads to these health outcomes. We can draw strong correlations, but nothing is definitive. So
Yep.
keep
Yep.
it. And that's probably a really risky blanket statement. Some researcher could come back and be like, oh, Aaron, blah, blah, blah. But you get what I'm saying.
We'll just tell them to
Like,
shut up. Right.
stop spreading your lies.
Texas Mike will just be like, "Hi, you shut your mouth, boy." All right.
You sound really authoritative there.
Hey, you listen here. uh,
Jeez.
yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I was thinking like that was kind of what I wanted to lead into. Is like, you've probably seen, if you're listening, you've probably seen these graphs of like from like the 50s, right? Of like how much more sugar, like added sugar, is in our
Mm-hmm.
foods, and how that correlates with like obesity rates, right? Okay, like Aaron just said, that's one factor, right? Like we also need to look at like what are our eating patterns like? What do our environments like you said? Like, guess what? We move less, right? We
Mm-hmm.
spend less time outside, right? We spend more time sitting. Our jobs are more inactive, right? Like we eat more calories on a regular basis, not just because of sugar, but because of, processed foods that taste amazing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a bunch of things that go into this. So like she said, sure, we can try to pinpoint on one thing, but that's a really bad way to look at why we have an outcome we do, right? We have to look at, just like we talk about with you. Like you can say, oh, I need to stop eating carbs and then I'm going to be healthy. Well, you know what? There's a million other things that go into you being a healthier person. And if we're just going to pinpoint one thing to put the blame on or mark our progress on or whatever, like it's probably not going to go very well. We're now operating with a very limited amount of data, and we're going to have a very uncomprehensive understanding of what's actually happening and why.
Yep, exactly. And did you know that the amount of added high fructose corn syrup has actually declined
Mm-hmm.
in recent years? The amount has declined, yet obesity rates continue to rise. So again, we see this decoupling of the suspected cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's very complex. There's a lot more that goes into it.
Yeah, for sure.
And speaking of added sugars, so something I like to, when I'm counseling people and they're worried about sugar, and don't get me wrong, I encourage people to reduce and limit the amount of added sugar in their diets in favor of having a good nutrient package with the sugar that they are consuming. So, for example, having the sugar in fruit is, loaded with vitamins and minerals. It's got great fiber, it's filling. There's a lot of different things going on with eating that fruit versus, eating a piece of candy that's just straight sugar, doesn't have any of those vitamin minerals or fiber. Each of those foods has a place in a healthful diet. It just means you're getting a different nutrient package with those foods. So eating a ton of candy that doesn't have any other benefit than just calories and sugar is probably not as favorable as eating more of a nutrient package like fruit that has a lot more benefit along with that sugar. So that's one thing that I encourage people to do is like look at your food package, like look at the nutrient package you're getting with that sugar. The other thing is we now have on food labeling the added sugar category.
Right.
So you can actually see which foods have naturally occurring sugars in the food and which foods have added sugars. So a really common one is yogurt. Yogurt, cow's milk has naturally occurring sugar in the form of lactose. It's just part of the product of milk. Added sugar would come in if they sweeten the yogurt or if they add sugar to, chocolate milk and make it sweeter or something like that. And so you can see on the label the added sugars. Now, I think I don't know if all labels have it now, but I'm pretty sure they do. When
like
did that come about? It's been years since that came about, but just to give you a little ballpark figure, because there are recommendations on how much added sugar that men and women should have in their diets. And they categorize this into genders, just like they do, everything with nutrition and health information. But 9 teaspoons for men of added sugar. So that's 36 grams or 150 calories of added sugar is the recommended limit. And 6 teaspoons for women, which is 25 grams or 100 calories. Now, I've never had clients count their added grams of sugar and report back to me. So again, this comes down to I can give someone those numbers and say that, okay, a 12-ounce can of soda has 8 teaspoons of added sugar. Okay. So that goes all of a sudden one soda and nothing else in your diet is counted in this. One soda goes over the recommendation for women and almost gets you at your limit for men, just from one soda. But that's because that food product is all sugar. And it's not a natural product. We didn't get to the soda tree, right? And go get this. Fine. But I think it's important for people to make that distinction and to understand that when we hear all this fear mongering on sugar and how it's toxic and all these things, well, if you're consuming a very highly concentrated food product that has a lot of sugar in it and not much else, then that's going to have a more profound effect. And it's going to skew all of the numbers and percentages and limitations and recommendations that we hear so much of, it's going to skew that in the direction of, oh, you just you went over your recommendation because you had this one product that was super concentrated.
Right.
So there's nothing to worry about bananas or grapes or potatoes, or even having that piece of candy or that can of soda if you enjoy it. Like there's nothing wrong with that if you put it in the context of a healthful eating pattern and healthful behaviors like moving your body and stress management and getting enough sleep and all of the things we talk about.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that because that was really good.
You don't have anything? Okay.
I mean, I can talk more. I just don't have anything to add to
that. Did my soapbox just inch above yours?
I mean, that's one way to look at it. I was just thinking that maybe we said the things we wanted to say. I don't know. Do you need a win today? And maybe Aaron needs a win. Yes. Like, you know how like on the Olympic pedestal, it's like first and then like second's a little bit lower and like then third's a little bit lower.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're up there on first, I'm in the locker room. Okay. My soapbox didn't even make the trials. So
I'll be up there drinking my high fructose free beer and enjoying, spraying it everywhere.
Drinking your arsenic. I thought you were going to say drinking your high fructose corn syrup, just like
why not?
Straight.
Chug it down.
Why not? Yeah.
Well, and just on that note, as a triathlete, as an endurance athlete, I have consumed a lot of added sugar on multiple days. In fact, when I would race an Ironman, like that would probably be the majority of my calories for that day was just in simple sugars because you just don't have enough hours in the day to, make up for others. So in saying that, I'm just going to point out that I have a clean bill of health so far.
I am appalled, Aaron.
And the toxicity hasn't gotten to me yet. My body is still able to do what I want to do.
Hanging on by a thread, guys. Any minute now.
I know. Oh, this was fun.
This was fun.
Do you have anything else to add?
Oh, I don't. I could probably go on for a long time.
I think we could keep going.
Said, yeah. Yeah. No, I'm good. Never mind.
Okay.
Yeah. You want to do me and the Medane? You got one? Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to go first? You want me to go first?
Mine was this morning when I went mountain biking with a friend. This friend lives in Utah and she used to race triathlon professionally with me. And so because we both live in the West and fairly proximal to each other, we would, cross paths at races all the time. She was always just super friendly, loved being out there, really encouraging, like you'd pass each other on the course and, give a holler. And when Matt and I went down to St. George earlier this spring, she lives in Cedar City. And so we tried meeting up and we, texted like every day, when are you riding? Are you going to blah, blah, blah. And we never got to meet up. And so we were like, how could we be basically in the same area and we can't coordinate a ride? So she texted me and said, hey, my family's going to be in Boise. They're doing kind of an Idaho and Oregon trip. And so we've been texting back and forth all week and we finally made the ride happen this morning. Nice. And so I took her on some of my favorite, mountain bike trails around Boise. And it was just super fun to, be riding these trails that I ride all the time, but with somebody who's seeing them for the first time. And it's super smoky here, unfortunately. And so you don't get the same views and everything, but she would just be like, oh yeah, I love this. Oh, this is great. And oh, this is so fun. Oh, I love this. And wow, look at how the trails all connect. Like for her, it was the first experience. So she was totally loving it and just really enjoying it. And so, it renewed my, my appreciation for our trail system and being able to share that with somebody. And of course, reconnect with somebody that has like a similar, history. So it was really fun.
That's always fun when like you get to see things kind of new again because someone else is experiencing them. That's always a real treat. Yep. I like that. That's awesome. Nice.
Yeah. How about you?
For me, mine was on Sunday. So Sunday morning, my phone decided to crap out on me, right? My screen just stopped working. And I had, my wife and Kat and Lila were staying with Kat's dad for the night, just to have some time up there with him. And so Sophie and I were kind of having our own time together, right? And we had this day planned of just like hanging out and being together and that kind of stuff. And I spent like 6 hours, I think, between because Kat wasn't here, so I didn't have a phone, right? So I'm like going to her mom's house to use her phone and looking up addresses for different places and trying to get fixed and figure out what I need to do. And so Sophie and I didn't get any of that time. It's the weekend. It was supposed to be a day of relaxing. I'm running all around. It's just kind of stressful. This was a big week for me. I started some new projects and I was like, I really need my phone this week. Like, this isn't good. And so it's just like this real stressful thing in a lot of ways, right? And so this is probably, I don't know, hour 3 of running to all kinds of places and coming back and getting on my computer and looking up addresses, and I'm driving down the street and I just turned on the radio and it was a song. I can't remember what song it was. It was some song that I liked. And I was just like, I'm driving down the street and there are all these palm trees and it's a beautiful day and it's sunny. Like, rolled my window down and let like the kind of hot air come in and turned up my air conditioning so I could stay cool, right? But just feeling like the hot, humid air and radio playing, and I'm just driving. I was like, you know what? Like, today kind of sucks, but this moment's pretty nice, like,
Oh, I like that.
I can enjoy this moment. This is really nice. I live in this kind of like, partially tropical place where I love palm trees and the ocean's close and it's a good song. And I'm just driving. I kind of like driving, it's a beautiful afternoon. And so I just like committed myself to like that 10 minutes. I was like, you know what? Screw today, but I like this moment and I'm just going to really enjoy it. And it was like this wonderful break in the midst of kind of a crappy day. Yeah. So that's mine.
I love that you gave you gave yourself permission to also say, this day really sucks. Like, sometimes, it's all nice to put on rose-colored glasses and be like, oh, see, life is good and blah, blah, blah. It's also okay to say, okay, this whole day has been a shit show, but this right here is all right. Like, okay, I'm going to appreciate this moment, even though I'm headed to more shit show down the road.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, because I want to get back into another topic, but like, just when we're like trying to be more positive, I think too often we spend a lot of time trying to ignore like the negative things or the negative thoughts and feelings we have, like, oh, shut up, get down. I got to be positive. And I think that's a backwards approach. I think what we really need to do is acknowledge that they're there, right? Like, it exists. It's part of your experience. So go, I'm really thinking these negative things about myself, and I can do these other things too, right?
Yeah.
I think that's an important concept of just, I don't know, whatever. Yeah. Because I could have just been like, oh, this is really nice. This is a really great day, right? Like, and just try to like BS myself and just sink into this positivity, but not be able to get there because it's not honest, versus if I can say, hey, today sucks, but I like this moment. I settled into that moment like a champ, no problem, because it was experiencing it in an honest way, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe we should do a topic. I'm thinking the title would be yes and. A lot of people say yes, but like there's always a downside, but yes and that like concept. Yeah, this really sucks, and this actually isn't okay. Yeah. Maybe we should do that.
I think we should. It's a powerful concept.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for listening to our rants and our information, and hopefully you learned something, and hopefully you are not afraid of sugar or any other food, and be healthy and well, and let us know what you think of the podcast.